Welcome to Up Your Nerd Cred. Did you used to know everything that was happening with the Marvel and DC universes? Did finding out that some superheroes are from Marvel and some are from DC blow your mind? Has keeping track of everything that's happening there and then realizing that we're talking about the comics universe and not the cinematic ones? And all of these different universes are having their own multiversal crises. They've all gotten out of hand. Well, don't worry. Up Your Nerd Cred is here to talk about the gods cosplaying as men, the men cosplaying as gods, and how much the cinematic universes are leaving out. At the end of each episode, you'll hopefully know a little bit more than you did and can up your nerd cred. I'm your casual host, Cece. I learned a lot of words by reading them and didn't realize how many of them I hadn't actually heard until I insisted to my friends that the word was pronounced portmanteau. My friends were confused as hell and asked me to go ahead and get Google out and find out how it was pronounced. And let me just say that I felt like the epitome of silliness when I heard it. But despite my aggressive literacy, though, this guy is the real reader here.
Yeah, that's me, your gay comic geek and cosplay nerd and co-host, A.M. Diaz. Here to bore you with all the comic facts that you didn't really ask for, but I'm still going to give it to you because that's how my hyperfixation works. And you clicked on this podcast, so what's about to happen is your fault.
It is kind of your fault, but as long as you enjoy what we're doing, I feel like everyone's having a good time. Consent is sexy! But what this means is that he's also our resident expert nerd, so I'll be asking him... I'll be asking him all kinds of burning questions each week. But I think the first question that we should start with is, what are we nerding out about this week? And remember, listeners, you can nerd out about all kinds of things. It does not have to be heroes and villains. Your TV show has layers. Some royal is hooking up with somebody. And I know that we talked about this last week, but I kind of think that they are trying to make sure that they are saying that, like, no, we're not hooking up. Anyway, I'm gonna let you read the blog. Anyway, besides that, the pundits have been losing their mind about the Mondami primary election. So, AM, what are you nerding out about this week?
Well, I've been kind of obsessed with the new Netflix series, K-pop Demon Hunters.
I'm sorry, what?
You've seen K-pop Demon Hunters.
No?
Yeah,
I
okay,
am not familiar. Okay, tell me about this, please. Because what?
All right. So it's a new animated show done by the same people who did the Spider-Man Into the Spider-Verse movies.
Okay,
And
so I'm good animation, yes.
fantastic animation. And it follows 3 K-pop singers who by day are selling out concerts, but by night are protecting the world from demonic forces that are trying to enter our world.
Okay,
They
Sailor
are
Stars.
kind of, their whole thing is that they're, part of the reason why they're K-pop performers is because they come from a long line of almost, I would say, like, warrior priestess type heroes from, feudal Korea and stuff like that, where their music would help create a barrier that would protect the real world from the demonic world. So by singing, they would be able to join everybody's energy together. And that would create a barrier that would protect the earth from the demons. And very much in the vein of the Buffy the Vampire Slayer, into every generation, there is a K-pop band. Well, not K-pop. They do different genres. So every generation has a different genre of music.
K-pop taking over the world means that right now it's going to be K-pop Demon Hunters?
Yep. And it is honestly one of the most fun movies that I've seen this year so far. It is... because it's a musical as well. And they use a lot of...
Hang on, wait, cycle back. You didn't tell... I recognize that as K-pop stars, it should be a musical, but you didn't actually specify that it was a musical. That is really cool.
Well, I kind of thought it went without saying, but yeah, it's like all the music is K-pop type music, and with this movie, it follows the current group of hunters, and they are a band called the Huntrix, and
why does the Korean band have like a Latin name?
Because it's cool.
Okay, that's fair.
And they're getting ready to, like, reinforce the protective shield. Because they've been selling out concerts, and people love them, and they're so popular and all that. But the demons decide to fight fire with fire, and so they decide to create a boy band to oppose the girls.
Oh my god, this is a bard on bard fight, isn't it? This is a 100%. Bard on bard fight. Oh, wow. Okay.
100% this is a bard fight. And it is, and while all this is going on, one of the girls in the group has a secret that she, is afraid to tell the others about, and it's, it leads to conflict, and then there's like the leader of the boy band is kind of
Hmm.
like not fully evil, but he is, and so there's a lot of drama, great music, and the animation is just so fun. The characters are so well developed, especially the main girls. And it also
Hmm.
makes a great commentary on the state of the music industry, K-pop in particular,
Hmm.
but also like discussions of like legit musician performers versus the cookie cutter manufactured corporate type of bands.
Okay,
So
so the kind who were put together by Lou Pearlman versus the kind who come together on their own.
exactly, except in this case, the corporate overlords were literal demonic overlords.
I'm
It's a
not
little on the
sure how
nose.
that's wildly different from. Okay, but you know what? I'm not suggesting that the
One has
people.
money, the other one has demonic superpowers.
I'm sure you're trying to like make a differential, but I feel like Pam looking at the same picture.
I mean, I don't think they can open gates to a hell dimension, so
You know what? That's fair. That's fair. I accept this. I accept this
yeah. And
mostly because
also,
yeah.
the soundtrack slaps, and it is now part of my workout regime, and my Instagram and TikTok is basically overwhelmed by K-pop demon hunters.
You know what? I have a lot of respect for that. And part of the reason that I have so much respect for that is the fact that the other reason I sang Sailor Moon songs to my son in Japanese because I've listened to it so much. And I don't speak even a little bit of Japanese. I know like 5 words for sure, but it got all the words down. Like I know that I sat there and talked about Sailor Moon fighting Goku, but I want to make sure that we are all on the same page that like that whole Toonami thing is cute, but I am 100% a Sailor Moon stan. I have the tattoo and everything. So
Yeah, I'm pretty
that's
sure there's been a lot of discussions, and I think a lot of people agree that Sailor Moon beat Goku.
people are weird. I've seen so many people trying to say that Goku could beat Sailor Moon, and I'm just like, no. Anyway, you know what? We already talked about this. We already established it that Sailor Moon is too nice to whip up on Goku, but she absolutely could destroy him.
All right,
So I'm gonna
so
go to the thing that I am like sitting there like nerding out about, and that is the fact that like I went onto the Brock's Candy website to see if I could order stuff from them directly because I'm a ridiculous jelly bean person. I love jelly beans. I sat there and remember when the pandemic started, I would actually do like a countdown based on where I was jelly bean wise because we all thought that we were going to shelter in place for 2 weeks and I had enough jelly beans for about a week and a half of shelter in place. Anyway, so I love jelly beans, and it sucks having to wait for Easter each year for jelly beans to come back because I'm Jewish. I want my jelly beans, but apparently you can't bulk buy them on the website if you're a pleb. They'll just tell you it's available at that store, but I know that they're making things up, okay? Because, like, I was at that store. I know you don't have it. And do I recognize the fact that in the grand scheme of things, that they are literally just jelly beans and there are other things that are going on? Yes, but the other kind aren't as good. It's like a restaurant that only has Hunt's ketchup.
oh, it's not that serious.
I went to Pitt. They do not play about their ketchup. That is a Heinz town, okay? So, anyway, we're going to take a quick break and then we will be right back. Hi, welcome back, and happy 4th of July!
And happy birthday, Steve Rogers.
That's right. Today we're talking about the star-spangled man with a plan, the former skinny kid from Brooklyn, the man who assembles the Avengers, Steven Rogers, aka Captain America.
AKA America's ass.
I mean, look, the original Antifa, okay, his first issue has him punching Hitler in the face on the cover. His villain is the Red Skull, and he's punching Hitler on the cover. Yeah, Chris Evans has done an amazing job of portraying him, and honestly, I completely agree when Ant-Man said, as far as I'm concerned, that's America's ass, but I digress. So he's been around for nearly 85 years, and is one of the most known Marvel characters of all time. So the question burning me up this week is how much of Steve Rogers' long career has been left on the cutting room floor so the MCU can progress? There's a lot. Okay, so the average MCU
Yeah.
fan has a pretty solid understanding of who Steve Rogers is. He's a fundamentally good person who sticks to his principles regardless of like, whatever else is going on like with the world and things of that nature.
Yeah.
So
He's the kind of guy who's willing to jump on a grenade to save people he barely knows, refusing to agree to registration because he knows where it leads, and is loyal to the ones he loves to something of a fault.
Yeah, well, if you're fortunate enough to see in-game in theaters, then you were able to experience 10 years of edging reaching its glorious conclusion when
Good night,
while hold
everybody.
when holding Mjolnir and his shield, Cap finally told the Avengers to assemble.
Honestly, I still get tears a little bit when I see that scene.
If you don't, then there's something wrong with you. But realistically speaking, I bet Steve is a little bit of a team-up tramp. So we're going to be talking about some of the various team-ups that we've seen. So here's like a broad list of the team-ups that I've seen of him, and then we're going to cycle back and like talk about how this all worked out. So I have him on the list as like he started out in the Invaders, and then he was retroactively made a founding Avenger, aka Earth's Mightiest Heroes.
Yeah.
A secondary Avengers team, a third Avengers team, looks like a fourth Avengers team. Morgan Le Fay's Queen's Guard. Though technically it wasn't his fault.
Yeah, that was magical shenanigans.
Another Avengers group, the new Avengers group. Wait, is this a different lineup than the other four?
Well, I mean, all of them were kind of different setups, but this was like the post-disassembled team. But then it eventually led to the events of Civil War, which we previously spoke about, where, Tony and Steve had their messy breakup and, again, made it everyone else's problem.
So, like, Eric and Charles made their breakup everyone else's problem as well, but yes.
To be fair, that was kind of also like the breakup that made it everyone else's problem.
Yes, but I will say that that is the team up where we found out that Steve Rogers had been authorized by S.H.I.E.L.D. to assemble any team he deemed necessary.
Yep, which the government did not like when they realized Steve wasn't going to toe the line during the Civil War incident.
Yeah, well, he had it for any team, for any mission, and I mean...
Well, I mean, the idea was... if you're going to trust somebody to create a team of superheroes, you trust Captain America. But the thing the government keeps forgetting is that Captain America doesn't really work for them. He works for the people.
Yeah, so we have the Secret Avengers that he had during the Civil War.
Yep, where Rogers created his own team with Luke Cage and Blackjack and hookers. Wait,
what? Blackjack and hookers? Hang on, what? Why was is this the same person who sat there and talked about like language in the MCU? Hey, anyway, so cycling back, so there was a team up with there's an Avengers / Young Avengers / Secret Warriors team up that was done to take down Norman Osborn.
Yeah, this was around the time that essentially Tony, who was the director of S.H.I.E.L.D. at the time, lost control of S.H.I.E.L.D., and Norman Osborn became the new Golden Boy because he helped save the world from a Skrull invasion. But he's evil, and things went to hell, and so they had to eventually team up to try to take him down, even though the registration with Civil War was still happening, so it was a mess.
Okay, and then after that, the Avengers Unity Division, where there's an Avengers mutant team-up formed after they tried to take Hope.
Yeah, this was the messy, and possibly one of the times where I feel like Captain America was not the hero he was supposed to be.
Mm-hmm.
Because the events that led to the Unity team being formed were during the Avengers versus X-Men war.
This is, again, like when they're all trying to be like, oh, we gotta take Hope into protective custody, despite the fact that, like...
They didn't even, try to work with the X-Men, they just tried to take control of the situation, and everything that happened was the Avengers' fault.
I mean, we talked about that in episode 3, about how that was the Avengers' fault, but it's worth noting that Cap was part of the reason that we had that problem in the first place. And again, we're still just listing the teams. We're going to cycle back and talk about some of the different teams that he is on. So
but to
we're
clarify,
still going through...
Yeah. To clarify this was basically Steve having guilt about what happened during the Avengers vs. X-Men thing. And so he decided to form a team trying to make the mutants a bit more prominent as part of the Avengers. Because for the longest time...
is a team-up tramp.
Yeah. Well, I mean...
So after...
Okay, go ahead.
After that, we have the Astonishing Avengers, when the heroes and villains had their personalities swapped by Scarlet Witch, and yet the incorruptible pureness of Steve left him the same, because of course it did. So the Avengers Unity Division leads into the part where then he was aligned with Hydra, but it's not his fault. There was a sentient cosmic cube that had trapped a version of Steve in its brain and then spit another version of Steve out.
Yeah, it was a mess.
And
Yeah,
then more recently, he's on the Avengers again.
yes.
Because he
There's a
was a
reason
team
why.
up tramp.
Well, that's the thing. I don't think that's really good choice of phrase because most of these teams are Avengers. They're just updated versions of the Avengers. So
But if
it's
it gets very ship of Theseus if he's the only Avenger that's left to form new teams.
well, that's the thing. He's not always. A lot of times, a lot of these teams were formed by other people. He's not always the leader of the Avengers. The Avengers
Okay,
have
that's
chair
fair.
people, so there's always somebody else who takes over the role. So at one point, Tony was in charge. Another point, the Wasp was in charge. Then there was times where Black Panther or, you know, I don't know, Scarlet Witch or Carol were in charge.
Right.
So
You
it's
know
like
what? That's
it's never falling entirely on Steve, and that's the reason why I'm like he's been on a lot of teams. He's jumped
hmm
around to different Avengers and helped form and been major member of it. But
hmm
so many of his teams are still Avengers, so it's just kind of like less him jumping from team to team to more him, let's say, restructuring the team.
restructuring the team. Okay, you know what? That's fair.
Yeah,
So
it's like, if we want to talk like a team slut, let's talk about Wolverine, because that man
look,
had a few years where he was appearing in every team book.
I mean, you have somebody who could sit there and be like, I have like, like my sharp things of fury. I do not get mad if you toss me like I'm a dwarf. Like Gimli is not going to agree to be a part of a fastball special.
Have we just jumped to Lord of the Rings from?
We did just jump to Lord of the Rings, but no one tosses a dwarf. And Wolverine is
But
just like, throw me!
yeah,
I'm
it's like
it,
no, I get it.
so
But yeah, it's like with Steve, he's always. I mean, he is a he. He's a soldier. He believes in unity, working together for a greater goal.
mhm.
So him, like, he teams up with a lot of people. He teamed up with the X-Men, the Avengers, the Champions, the Defenders. He's always believed he can't do everything by himself. He's one of those heroes who believes that the greater community, the team, is going to be stronger together than they are apart. That's the reason why Avengers Assemble is such a prominent thing for him, even though he was not an original Avenger. He was brought in.
Technically, yeah.
Yeah, it's like the original team was Iron Man, Thor, Wasp, Hulk, and Ant Man.
hmm
Steve got brought in later, but he became the heart and soul of the team because if anybody understood the need to unify for the greater good, it was Steve.
Honestly, it's really interesting too, to a certain extent, with Steve, the fact that he works really hard to personify like a lot of American values without necessarily actually following along with whoever is in charge of America has. Like he has a tendency to, whenever the government starts doing some ridiculous mess, he's just like, all right, deuces. Just because I have the name Captain America does not mean that I am here to be used by you however you want. And I have a firm respect for that.
Yeah, well, Captain America, like the original real world concept was he was, propaganda in a way. I mean,
Mhm.
he was created before America joined the war.
Right.
So his creators created him to stand up for the American ideals of truth and justice, and
The American
that's
way.
essentially. I mean, him and Superman share a lot of similarities.
So it's worth noting though that actually like I think that we have a lot of information about who Steve is, but I do think that we forgot to formally introduce him. So let's cycle back a little bit and formally introduce this man. So Captain America, which is a name that is not always Steve Rogers, that is a completely separate conversation that we will have. Well, not completely separate, but a somewhat separate conversation that we will have. But Captain America as Steve Rogers, so his full government name is Stephen Rogers, as you can probably guess. And he was
Yes,
created by Joe Simon and Jack Kirby, and he debuted in
the
December
King.
1940 in Captain America Comics #1. So I just want to make sure that like we had a chance to make sure that we all know who
Yeah,
created him.
we went way
So
into the story before we even
yeah,
brought that up.
yeah, things happen, but it's also worth noting that like as he's created, Joe Simon and Jack Kirby, they're very aware of things that are happening within the context of Europe and trying to sit there and create a character that embodies the conceit of American values to a certain extent.
Oh yeah. Well, it was like, America, especially back during the war and stuff like that, had this very specific brand of like, life, liberty, and the pursuit of happiness sort of thing.
Yeah.
Especially creators at the time. Again, Superman and Captain America
Mhm.
both stood for fighting for the underdog, for fighting for what was right. They were idealized paragons of justice and
I
fairness.
mean, to a certain extent, I realize that Clark probably was not getting sand kicked in his face the way that all the Charles Atlas ads would have had, but Steve was absolutely. And also, that man gets depowered and has like the super soldier serum, this like kind of like it works, it doesn't work, it works, it doesn't work, and all that jazz happening. So him being a really, really good person, regardless of like how much he's able to be a superhero, is I think one of the more important things about Stevie Boy.
100%, because with Superman, he was created to be the ideal, the
Hmm.
Ubermensch sort of thing. But with Steve, the irony of it, because he started off
Hmm.
as this very weakly, twerp,
Hmm.
but he had this belief in doing what was right, doing what was good,
Hmm.
and it's something I love in the MCU movies where he says, "I don't like bullies. I don't care where they're from."
Hmm.
But Steve, when he got the powers of Captain America, he got the super soldier serum and all that stuff. He essentially became Hitler's ideal during the war. The blonde hair, blue eyed,
Hmm.
strapping, but he fought for everything against what Hitler believed.
So you mean an Aryan wonder who's just like, yeah, actually, no, thanks, bye.
Yeah, he believed in equality. He believed in truth. He believed in that everybody deserved dignity and kindness and respect. And people have often complained that Captain America is boring because he's just rah rah America. And he's propaganda, which unfortunately Cap kind of was. He was propaganda.
He started out as propaganda, but I don't know if I would say that this man is rah rah America. He's not gonna sit there and like do the full like things that the leftists do, where they're just like, hey, like by the way, America is absolute trash. But this man is
Well,
not.
that's the thing that a lot of people don't realize, because the thing is he does adorn himself in the flag, red, white, and
Mhm.
blue. That is his color scheme and all that.
Yeah.
But the thing that makes Steve interesting is the fact that, yes, he believes in the American ideals
Mhm.
of, truth, justice, and pursuit of happiness and liberty. But he also believes that you do not follow blindly. He understands that corruption can happen anywhere at any time. And so, to quote Ahsoka Tano from the Star Wars Clone Wars, you have to speak up and you have to call out corruption wherever it is. And that's what Cap does. He will not just toe the line to what the government says, he will not toe the line to what people think America should be. He's going to continue believing in doing what's right, doing what's
Yeah.
fair, and protecting anybody who needs to be protected, especially if they're marginalized.
Yeah. And so it's actually like really worth noting too with Cap that occasionally his refusal to sit here and despite the fact that he is, he was initially created as a whole propaganda piece, he was
Mm-hmm.
absolutely put on to a certain extent be a USO puppet like in the 40s and things like that. And yes, they thought that he was going to be very cool and they were going to do the whole super soldier thing, but I don't think that anyone but Dr. Erskine looked at him and actually thought that he was going to be kind of the guy. I think that other people looked at him and are just like, if we can turn him into something, that means that we can find someone else to be the guy,
Well,
which
it's like
the
in
government
the
actually kept doing after,
the thing is, in the
he's
original comics, they just jumped straight into it. It was like, this is Steve. He's a good soldier. He's a good person. Give him the powers. There you go.
Mhm.
The MCU, I mean, the comics did it too, but I feel like the MCU made it more well developed about like how Steve was this really good person,
Mhm.
and they, kind of made it a bit more clear why he was a good person.
I mean, you
So it
can't
was
just
always part
jump
of
on a
his myth.
grenade all willy-nilly with people that you
Yeah,
barely know
because
and not
they
be a good person.
later comics and the MCU really developed that whole thing for him.
Mhm.
And Steve or Captain America or the Super Soldier program was just supposed to create an army of super soldiers.
Right.
But when the Doctor got killed, Steve was the only one, and the government honestly just didn't really trust him
Yeah.
because of the fact that he was the only one of their kind, and they just thought they would use him as a propaganda tool in the movies. In the comics, he went straight to the war. They did not give him.
Okay, because I'm just like, wait a minute, is he Tigger? The wonderful thing about Tiggers is Tiggers. Tigger with a T. With a
Yeah.
T. With a T. Captain America is Tigger.
Okay, we'll put that on a t-shirt.
Mm-hmm. He's the only one. Like, what did they do at the after Erskine got
the only
which
one.
quite frank. Well, because here's the thing. After Erskine got right, the person who came up with the whole super soldier serum and the Vita rays and everything else like that. Everybody else sat there and kept trying to replicate it by being like, oh, we're gonna like try to put something together, or oh, we're gonna like take your blood and make something, and blah 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 blah. But nobody was able to actually like perfectly replicate Cap
No,
as he was,
it's
right?
not been perfectly replicated. There's been a lot of variations. So, Black Widow, Winter Soldier, and with recent retcons and stuff like that, the Weapon X program for Wolverine, a lot of superheroes are the result of them trying to recreate the super soldier concept. So the Weapon X program for Deadpool and Wolverine was a shout back to the super soldier program.
How much blood did Steve give them?
Well, that was the thing. They couldn't recreate it, so that's the reason why Wolverine ends up with metal claws instead of,
No, I know, but to a certain extent, like, people are trying to recreate things based on what's in Steve's blood, but, like, how much blood did this man give? Because everybody keeps working on, like a vial or three, and even Henrietta Lacks had, like, a bunch of cells that went on to things. How are they getting so much out of Steve?
You bleed a lot when you're a superhero.
You get the bleeding a lot when you're a superhero, but typically don't you bleed into your clothes? I mean, are they sure that they're, like, if they're like, oh, let me come and get this blood spatter, are you sure that, like, you watched, like, the CCTV close enough to make sure that this is specifically Captain America's blood spatter?
But, no, it's superhero comics. I think you're thinking a little too hard on that. I mean, they did the same thing with Batman Beyond, where they explained that Terry McGinnis is the genetically modified son of Bruce Wayne because cloning tech, and they got a hold of Batman DNA from one of his many fights in Gotham. So, it's comics. It doesn't need to always make sense.
Yeah, blood does not do this, because I'm sitting there thinking about, with Captain America, the Captain America movie, beyond the fact that it was a little bit like, wow, you guys pulled out the Edward Norton Hulk situation. We have not even looked at Edward Norton in a while, but, like, you get a little bit of blood drip somewhere, and all of a sudden, like, your entire body has changed. Like, you have, like, what was that meant?
Well,
Sam Stearns, and then you have, like, She-Hulk also was, like, getting
but to be
changed
fair,
by, like, a blood drip. So, like,
yeah, but to be fair, again, it's comics. It doesn't need to make sense because super powerful gamma radiation that already created one hulking monster. You can get away with that. And with Captain America blood, it's not like they're doing an infusion of them. They're testing the blood and trying to find the chemical compound that created the super soldier serum.
Right.
So it's not them trying to, like, we're going to take this single drop of blood and put it in somebody and, oh my god, they got superpowers. No, it's, all right, we're going to take this blood and analyze it until we can figure out how to recreate.
Because just putting straight Steve blood into somebody else gets really homeopathic after a while.
Yeah, and that's the thing. It's like, if they could just do blood transfusions for Captain America, all the Avengers would have super soldier stuff at this point.
Right.
But no, it's like, they can't do that because they can't just transfer the stuff through his blood because that's not how it works for him.
Yeah, but they keep trying to sit there and figure out how to, like, take his blood and turn it into something. Like, how many people have gotten his blood? Like, there's a lot of people who've gotten just, like, the busted ass, like, super soldier serum.
Yeah.
Perhaps if Hydra wanted to have super soldiers, they could have maybe not killed Dr. Erskine, but
yeah. But it's. Well, the thing was, Nazis just didn't want to give America that weapon. It's a lot harder to capture somebody surrounded by soldiers than it is to kill them. So it's basically, I'm going to take my ball home with me.
You know what? I will go with that. In fact, what we're going to do is we're going to switch over to the part where Captain America changes his name more than he changes his draws. This boy, he changes his name so much. Okay, so here's the sexy nickname list that I have for Cap. Like, very specifically, Steve Rogers Cap. Okay, so he decided that he was bored with Captain America, and he decided to go with Nomad, which meant that,
to be fair, he was not bored with Captain America. He was pissed off at the government and refused to be Captain America to a corrupt government during the Nixon administration.
You know what? I respect not wanting to be the face of the Nixon administration. So I also have him as U.S. agent when he changed his name to Jack Daniels. Sir,
he never did that. That was John Walker, who was U.S. agent. Captain America never
John
took on
Walker.
that.
Okay. Oh, why did I? Oh, you know what? It's because I see how I made that. I mean, John Walker is also like kind of a Captain
Yeah,
America, but
I'm
not the
willing to
one
bet
that
you did
I'm.
a search for Captain America and just found because there's been a lot of people who've been Captain America.
Yeah, there actually has kind of been ridiculous. So we got Captain Steve Rogers and then Captain America again
I
because
mean, Captain Steve Rogers is just his name and rank.
yes, but like, what he's going by, he wasn't going by name and rank all the time.
Technically, he was. I mean, he was a soldier. The Captain America was just a nickname, technically.
I mean, to be fair, that is the reason why he got a whole bunch of back pay for all the time that he was frozen in the ice. They're like,
Oh yeah,
I mean, technically you're still employed by us, so like here's like
yeah. And he had
40
no next
years
of
worth
kin
of
for it to
back
go to.
pay. Like you're still technically enlisted and you're still technically a part of the system, so like we got to pay you for it because you've been here this whole time. But he did take Captain America again after Captain Steve Rogers when Bucky, who had been Captain America for a bit, got
Well, no, he took over as Steve was killed.
right.
Steve died at the end of Civil War. Bucky took over as Captain America until Steve came back, and then Bucky stuck around with Captain America for a bit, but then he went back to the Winter Soldier, and sometimes he comes back to Captain America. So
Yeah, but wait, do you think this means that we're going to? No, we can't get Sebastian Stan in like the spandex because we have Anthony Mackie, which I'm not mad about.
yeah, they skipped the Bucky Captain America period, which honestly I'm not too angry about.
Yeah, I feel like Bucky as Winter Soldier in the MCU like makes more sense of that because if you sit there and be like, I mean, to a certain extent, if you think about like the whole Falcon and the Winter Soldier, the part where he's sitting there trying to make amends as though he's in AA by going and being like, hey, so I low-key killed your kid like 70 years ago. I'm super sorry. Can't we be friends? Bucky is a completely whole separate situation, and Falcon and the
Maybe
Winter
next
Soldier is
July.
yeah, that one's a lot of fun. And also, really, I just want to point out the fact that we talked about this last week that Bucky might be a little bit on the multisexual side, and I'm just like, stop teasing me. So, cycling back to his uh best friend, we're going to call him best friend, Steve Rogers. He was also the chief of civilian oversight for Shield, and he was a kind of fasci America, and by that I mean like
Evil.
it's not. I'll take it. He's, it's not technically a nickname, but I'm
Oh
gonna give
no,
him that one
that's
today.
officially that is what he's called by a lot of
Steve-O?
the
Great.
Steve-O, because that's
Yes.
the evil Steve who was the Hydra Steve, Captain Hydra.
Yes. Which I have to say that everybody was like freaked as fuck when there's like, oh, BT Dubs Cap, here's Cap saying Hail Hydra. Anyway, so he was Commander Steve when basically he decided that Captain America was dead. So he basically just like went back to his given name and rank and things like that.
There was also that period where super soldier serum got sucked out of him.
How many times did he get the super soldier serum sucked out of him? Because
Not as many as
there are
you
a few
think.
times.
A few
Okay,
times,
I feel like
but
there are a few times though.
it's kind of like Professor Xavier walking. Every few years he gets his legs back, and then every few years he's back in the chair. But
Okay,
with
but
Steve,
if he's the only one with the super soldier serum, like how does it keep getting turned on and off again? Like or like
magical
on,
shenanigans.
clap
Remember
off.
that? Remember that cosmic cube?
I realized as I was about to say it, I'm just like, no, the cosmic, like, yeah, no. Okay, so.
Yeah. But he went back to being Steve Rogers because around that time he gave the identity to Sam Wilson because Steve was not really in any place to do that. And
well,
so Steve...
in the MCU, it's because he's old as balls and went back to hook up with Peggy, which is a whole thing because we know that Peggy sat there and lived a whole life and all that jazz. So I'm like, all right, anyway, yes.
Alternate universe and time travel. But Steve, for a while, was just like Steve Rogers. He was no longer Captain America because that was Sam. But eventually Steve got his, powers back, and suddenly he is Captain America again.
That seems pretty standard, actually. And so, other sexy nicknames that this man has had is Cap Wolf. What is that?
There was a brief story where he turned into a werewolf.
By night? Because I feel like Marvel already has a Werewolf by Night series. Like, why did they need to, like...
There's dozens of werewolves. It's comic books. There's werewolves, Wonder Girls. They're like a dime a dozen.
Look,
I mean, there's a nation of vampires.
Okay, so listen, it's very clear that our Halloween episode is already going to be like laid out. But so he's also labeled. Wait, hang on. Phoenix? Jean Grey's Phoenix?
Yep, that is 100% Jean Grey's Phoenix, because a few years back, when they finally brought Jean back from the dead after like 20 some years,
Mm-hmm.
well, Jean was kind of like, you know what, Phoenix? I love you, but I think we need to see other people. It's not you, it's me. I need to have my own time. And so the Phoenix decided it needed to rebound after Jean broke up with
Mm-hmm.
it, which
Mm-hmm.
is really messed up considering the fact that technically Jean and the Phoenix are the exact same entity, but
Yeah, that's a whole
yeah,
conversation to have,
the
but yeah.
Jean Grey Phoenix thing is like a multi-episode story.
We did
But
touch on it briefly in
oh yeah, but it's like
episode 3,
going into
but this
detail.
is
If we went into detail, yeah. But anyways,
yeah.
so the Phoenix decided it needed to rebound, so it decided to hold a fighting tournament where it took a bunch of different superheroes, mostly Avengers, and imbued them with powers so they would fight each other, and then the one that the Phoenix connected with the best and the one that won would become the new Phoenix. And
Isn't
Steve
this
was
the
one of the
situation in which
people.
I was saying that like Jean kept rejecting the Phoenix and driving it into the arms of other like first I said it was other mutants and you're like nope it's actually other people so like yeah
Yeah,
didn't
because
Jean drive the Phoenix into everybody else's arms?
I mean, technically, kind of. First, after she died,
Hmm.
kind of, because shenanigans. But after the Dark
I mean
Phoenix thing,
Steve has died like 3 times at least, right?
probably more. But with the Phoenix thing, there was Maddie, which
Hmm.
Jean rejected, and the Phoenix went to Maddie because it was the closest equivalent.
Hmm.
Then it went to Rachel, who wanted the Phoenix Force.
Yes.
Then it.
Wait, Rachel is Rachel Hope as well?
No,
The
Rachel and
Hope.
Hope are two different people.
Okay, just double checking.
Yeah, Rachel is the Days of Future Past child of Cyclops and Phoenix. Hope is the creation that the Phoenix made to essentially be a body for the Phoenix.
Okay, just double checking.
Yeah, but the Phoenix thing is like Jean will usually sometimes reject the Phoenix and sometimes embrace it. It kind of depends on the mood that she's in and what's going on in her life. But during that time, she pushed it into essentially the arms of the entire team of Avengers, and Captain America had it for a brief second, and then eventually it decided on a character called Echo from Daredevil.
The one who was deaf and an amputee who
Mm-hmm.
shot Kingpin in the face.
Yep.
That is a spoiler, but also that show did come out like 3 years ago.
Yeah. But Steve, for a brief minute, was the Phoenix, and so was like Wolverine and Carol Danvers and She-Hulk and Echo and so many others. But yeah, Captain
If
America
you
was
are a
Phoenix.
superhero, you might have Phoenix Force.
Yes, the Phoenix is the cosmic equivalent of HPV at this point because superheroes, they get around.
Yeah, they are all hooking up. And see, and this is why it burns when they anyway. So back to honestly what I think is the grossest thing that the grossest like name that Stevie Boy has gone by, Spider King.
Yeah, that was one during the symbiote thing, I believe. I didn't read
They
that
turned
storyline, but
they
it
turned him into
was.
a spider.
I mean, Spider-Man's been turned into a spider,
Yeah,
so
but Spider-Man already has like the whole like spider thing going on. It'd be like, like Ant-Man and Spider-Man popping up with like random assortments of like extra limbs popping up. All right, like I can kind of get that. Like Ant-Man popping up with extra limbs might be weird, but Spider-Man extra limbs, that is okay.
I mean,
I
they
do
turned the
not,
Punisher into a Frankenstein at one point, so
I suppose.
it's comics.
That's so gross. But you know what? The important part is that we've covered like a whole bunch of stuff about Steve, and ultimately, I still contend he's a bit of a team tramp, mostly because of the fact that he keeps ship of thesusing all of these Avengers team ups, and so he's like the only one who remains from all of the disassemble and reassemble and disassemble and reassemble.
And that's not even just going to all the stories that the MCU has not even touched upon, because
I'm just
there
saying,
is
like the
just so much of things. I mean, the Heroes Reborn storyline, the forgotten, erased period where he did not go into the ice, but instead fought communists. Yeah.
I respect the fact that as a product of his time, he would sit there and try to fight communists, but like, bro, what? You know what?
Well, it was a
Product
thing
of his
back.
time,
Yeah.
1940s,
Well,
communists
that was the thing.
actually.
Before he got folded into Marvel and the Avengers, they were trying to keep Captain America relevant after the war.
Hmm.
And so they had a series of Captain America books where He was a commie buster.
I'm assuming that this is in part because just basically we were like, blah, Russia has the temerity to like step to us and we have to
Partially
tell
that,
everybody that we're better.
partially that, but also because of the fact that Captain America was losing popularity during the post-war era.
Makes
Because,
sense.
he was a war propaganda tool a lot of time. After the war ended and things started to shift, especially during the Silver Age, where it was like DC, for example, was going for the very cartoony type stories.
Hmm.
Captain America, they were trying to find a niche with him, and it took a while before they finally decided, hey, let's just put him on the Avengers. And so that suddenly that commie
That's fair.
period was erased and never happened.
I mean, I honestly think that that makes a lot more sense because to a certain extent, disliking, like, there's a difference between disliking somebody because their ideology is like not fully in line with yours and disliking somebody because their ideology insists and demands that they hurt other people. And I feel like the like we don't quite line up on everything works better for like for the cap than just like, yeah, I'm actually going to hurt other people with my ideologies. So I can see him fighting communists because of like the whole like, like Cold War situation, but I'm really glad that that whole thing was kind of like nipped in the bud a little bit.
Yeah, I think they did some kind of retcon where they said it was like a different person posing as Captain America during that period. Because, at the time, Cap was frozen in ice in the new Avengers period, so.
That makes sense. So then we have to sit there and contemplate how many people are like out there actually like stealing identities all willy-nilly. Do they have like LifeLock or something in these various universes? Because people be wandering off with identities all the time.
Well, I mean, it's hard to keep everything straight when you've got shapeshifters, clones, alternate universes, timeline variants, all these different things. So, and not to mention the fact that superhero identities themselves are pretty fluid. I mean, there are currently a bunch of different Captain Americas running around in the comics.
Hmm.
So, like, Bucky will put on the Captain America suit. Steve and Sam, I believe, are sharing the Captain America identity.
Hmm.
There is a gay Latino Captain America. There's a bunch of different variations where it's like they're not doing the same job that Steve is doing. They're just all
Hmm.
finding their different niches, but they're all still standing for Captain America's ideals.
Which makes a lot of sense to a certain extent because, again, like Captain America stands very specifically for the American
Ideal.
ideals less than the actual American actions.
Yeah. Despite what people think, Captain America is a political character. That doesn't
Hmm.
mean, though, that he follows American politics. He doesn't
Hmm.
toe the line of what the current administration says is, their
Yeah.
stance. He stands for what is true and what is fair. He stands for the equality and all that, like we said earlier. So, and that's what he's inspired in all
It's
these other Captain Americas.
I know that politicians as a whole aren't really known for standing on whatever their principles are. And I feel like if we had a few more, there's always a thing of just like be the person that Steve wants you to be, Steve Irwin or Steve Rogers, or be the person that Mr. Rogers wants you to be, like, Fred Rogers or Steve Rogers. Either way, these are all like very much like the look for the helpers thing. And there's a lot of stuff that America has done that has not been like, let me go and be a helper. And I fully respect the fact that Steve is just like, nah, you guys are being stupid. You guys are sitting there like portraying the values that theoretically we hold dear. So absolutely not. I'm going to go ahead and follow along with the values that I came in here with. What was it in was it Falcon and Winter Soldier where Sharon talked about how Peggy was very much just like the whole, like when the world, like the winds are blowing at you, like you stand firm and say you move. And we are not, by the way, talking about the part where Steve was romantically involved with Peggy Carter and then her niece, Sharon Carter, a few years later, because that just gets kind of weird. So we're not talking about
I
that right this second.
mean, that's canon.
I know it's canon. It's even in the MCU. It doesn't make it not.
Yeah, no, I get it.
Anyway,
But yeah,
so
the funny thing is that line, if I remember correctly, it was in the comics. It was originally said by Steve,
even better.
but
So very
they gave
much
it,
the
yeah, they gave it to Sharon because, or not Sharon, to Peggy because of the fact that with Peggy, she, was Steve's. I would almost say like North Star.
Mhm.
So, she inspired Steve as much as he inspired America and and everyone else. I like the fact that they gave it to Peggy in that story. This story in the comics is another thing that got heavily changed from what they did in
Mhm.
the because she did not work with the American government in the original comic. She was more of a French spy, I believe.
Wait, she was a French spy, even though she's British?
Yeah, she was working with the French resistance,
Oh,
if I
okay, that
remember
makes sense.
correctly. I
Okay, that
could be
makes
wrong,
sense.
but it's like I felt like she was working with the French resistance and helping Steve like free France from German occupation and stuff like that.
Oui, oui, mon ami.
But yeah, it's like Peggy. You know, Peggy was a good addition for the MCU. I like the way they expanded her and made her into such a prominent, important character. And Haley Atwell is a treasure, and I miss her on TikTok.
I love her so much. And also, the guy that was playing Tony Stark's dad that was so fun to watch. And
Which
also,
one? The guy
Jarvis,
from Mad Men or the other one?
not the Mad Men one, the one from the TV show who was getting into shenanigans with Peggy and Jarvis.
Mm-hmm.
The reason why, like, actually, like, I know that we have an appreciation for Jarvis because of like Tony's suit, but having Jarvis, the actual person, be somebody who is very cool, and we see the reason why Tony names, like, the suit after Jarvis
Yeah,
is,
no, it's like that was a nice touch because they went straight for the AI companion Jarvis when they did the MCU, even though
Mhm.
Jarvis was an existing character.
Yeah.
Like, he is the Avengers' butler. He has been a long-standing part of the Avengers since day one. So I'm glad they brought him back in some capacity. Granted, he
Mhm.
doesn't get to be standing side by side with the Avengers because, there have been times where Jarvis has been a badass.
Wait, I'm sorry. Is Jarvis like an Alfred Pennyworth?
Well, 100%.
And oh my God.
Yeah, I mean,
Why
he's
are
not.
all of these butlers just like actually secretly badasses? What?
Yeah, well, it's like with Jarvis, it's like he's not as much of a like. I don't. If memory serves, he was not like Secret Service or Majesty's Secret Service sort of thing like Pennyworth was.
Hmm.
But the thing was, he stood with the Avengers. He worked with them. He served them. He took care of them. And so
So you mean he did more
that
than just buttle?
yeah, and so that guy shows up, and Jarvis is going to stand up. He might get his ass kicked, but he's not going to just sit there and cower.
You know what? I have a lot of respect for that.
Well, we
That
went off
that makes a lot of
topic.
sense. Very slightly, but you know what? On that note, we're going to go ahead and we're going to take a quick break, and then we'll be back to get you hyped up for next week. So, the week ahead is going to be a super busy one in the DC and/or Marvel universes. Actually, it's going to be most of the Marvel universe, but wait, how do you know? Because DC Comics actually put out a whole calendar with canon dates for all kinds of birthdays and events, and Marvel actually put out a full week by week look back for their 80th anniversary. So this week we have the anniversary of Reed and Sue Richards. Congratulations to them. Their wedding happened in 1965.
And they have never divorced. So that is a shock for most Marvel couples.
I mean, to be fair, like, Reed is a giant nerd, and if you marry a giant nerd, you have to be prepared to, like, deal with giant nerd. Don't get me wrong, I do not think that he's always been, like, the best giant nerd husband. He's very bad at being a husband at times, but
Yeah,
I
like,
do think that Sue did go into it with kind of an awareness of the kind of things that would happen.
no, you have to respect the fact that Sue has stuck it out with him because honestly, I think most people would have left Reed by now.
It's fair.
And I love Reed concept, but as far as being a father and husband,
Look, he's brilliant, but yeah.
he's neglectful.
Yeah, yeah. And again, like, I feel like Sue has a slightly better capacity to handle that kind of thing than I would, because let me tell you, if I was married to Reed Richards. Anyway, so we also have coming up this week, we have actually in 1963, so a little bit before Sue and Reed got married, we had the Avengers come together as Earth's mightiest heroes. In
Mm-hmm.
1963. And 1964, the Fantastic Four Annual Number 2 gave us the first origin of Doctor Doom, the first reveals of Latveria, and its capital city of Doomstadt. That's pretty
Wow, this
cool,
week feels
honestly.
very Fantastic Four heavy. I wonder why.
I'm just saying, okay, honestly, like, the Fantastic Four movie isn't even coming out for like a month, and I wish that I was cool enough to go to the premiere of it, but unfortunately, I am not. So I'm gonna have to see it in the theaters with the plebs. What about you?
Well, thanks to certain friends of mine in the cosplay community,
Mm-hmm.
I will be attending the premiere of the Fantastic Four movie. Thank you, Nerd Alert Cosplay, for inviting me along. I am very excited, and now I'm rampantly trying to put together a cosplay to wear to the premiere. So,
I believe in you.
photos will be available once the cosplay is finished. I will not say what it is yet, in case changes need to happen.
Yeah, changes may need to happen, but also I will remind you that the comic that you had online, the webcomic that you had online, had your character dressed up as Ant-Man. Or no, were you dressed up as Ant-Man or were you dressed up as the Hulk and harassing a child who was dressed up as Ant-Man to stay away from the wasp?
Oh, the character was dressed up like Captain America, but the entire cast was
Yes.
dressed up.
And you're just like, stay away from Wasp. And I was so amused by that because I know that there's some small child who is just like, what do you mean Ant-Man is bad for Wasp? Wasp and Ant-Man have been a great couple. And it's just like, yeah, yeah. The like, Miss Pym Jr. and Scott are fine. But if you want to sit there and go like to the originals, we're going to talk about Hank Pym and how he did not manage his temper correctly at some point in the future. But for right now,
Yeah, there's a
we're
lot
not.
of mental health. Yeah.
It's also, I saw somebody point out the fact that people are upset about how Riri Williams has started out in Ironheart being she's not a shining example of what it is that we would like our Black girls to be. But also, Scott Lang started out as like literally an ex-con. He had a job at Baskin Robbins despite having a master's in engineering because he came out of jail, and nobody was mad about Scott Lang
Well, I mean,
literally being a jailbird.
here's the thing. It's like so many heroes started off on the wrong side of the law. Hawkeye was
Mhm.
a villain when he was first introduced. The Black Widow
Scarlet,
was a
Black Widow, yeah.
Black Widow, Scarlet Witch and Quicksilver, Rogue of the X-Men.
Hmm.
You know, Riri is just joining a long line of amazing Avengers who made mistakes when they first started out.
Also, this is a reminder that we harassed you about Ironheart last week, and if you're not watching it this week, then I don't know what to tell you about.
Please watch
You're
it.
just wrong.
Please
You're wrong.
give
If
it
you're
the
not watching
love it
Ironheart,
deserves.
you are wrong.
Yeah. No, give it the love it deserves. It's a very fun and very, emotional series.
Mhm.
And the cast is phenomenal. Although I will say the actor playing the Hood, the entire time I'm just waiting for him to break out into Hamilton.
Well, I mean, look, not everybody can sit there and look at Anthony Ramos and be like, oh yeah, no, you have a absolutely total villain arc situation happening. And I'm just like, aren't you supposed to get killed off screen and then have like a note sent to your boyfriend from your dad? But, honestly, Anthony Ramos has done a lot over the course of time beyond just being John Lawrence, and I'm excited to see more from him. And I'm excited
I
to
still
see
remember
more
when they
from like
cast him on
Dominique.
Will and Grace, and he only appeared for like 2 episodes, and then he just disappeared.
Yeah, well, Lin-Manuel Miranda also like had a cameo on How I Met Your Mother. So
Right, but he was
Ariana
not.
DeBose was like the bullet in Hamilton originally, and now she's sitting there just like, I am Anita, like I am like making raps at different
Oh
award
no,
shows.
and that's fair, but it's like with them, they were like one-off characters for a thing or something like that. No, he was supposed to be a supporting character, and then they just wrote him off, and he deserved so much better because I'm like this cute little twink who, unfortunately, is getting sexually harassed by Karen Walker, and apparently he's very talented. Let's see more. Oh wait, no, he never appears after the first season of the reboot.
Weak.
But let's be
Well,
honest, that Will and Grace reboot was.
I
I went to
didn't.
a few tapings, and it was nice to see them back together, but it was a pale imitation to the original series. The first episode, they're like, "Oh no, the kids! Nobody wants to know about them having kids." It's like,
I want Will to have kids. I want Will to be settled down and married and have like honestly, I want Will to be settled down and married more than I want Grace to be settled down and married.
well, they wanted to do the whole "I'm single and dating random people" and all that stuff. It's like,
Do they want to make Sex in the City? Anyway, listeners, we have come to the end of our podcast. And I know, you're clearly devastated that this is all happening, but don't worry. I know it's over soon, but our next episode is going to be coming out on July 11th. And you're just like, wait a minute, hang on. Doesn't Uncanny Experience start on July 11th? Yes, it does.
well, technically, it starts on the 12th. The 11th is going to be the private party for the events for the people who are working the event. So it'll be all of us cosplayers, all the people who are helping us run the event, as well as the voice actors from X-Men Evolution, Sabretooth from X-Men the movie.
So you're going to be able to ask people to be on the pod then in the future, right? All right, great.
I will see what I can do. And we also will be having the original Jean Grey voice actress there as well.
Ooh.
And for anybody who is attending, just a reminder that classes are going to start, are going to be happening that weekend. And my class as Nightcrawler, the mutant monologues, will be taking place. We still have openings available for anybody who wants to sign up and create a monologue.
Mhm.
And we also might be doing something for people who may not feel comfortable writing their own monologues. We'll reveal more about it a little bit down the line.
Listeners, we've come to the end of our podcast. I know. You are clearly devastated about it. How is this over so soon? Well, good news. Our next episode will be coming on July 10th, even though AM is going to be at Uncanny Experience. So,
Yep. Very excited about that. It's only a few weeks away, and well, I
weeks?
mean,
No, baby, it is week away. You need to
God,
start
yes.
packing.
Oh
You need to
man,
start
it's
packing.
hey. To be fair, I am still doing con crunch. I am still trying to get everything ready. I've got some cosplays to finish, and yeah, it's like I might be the official Nightcrawler, but Nightcrawler is going to be turning to a bunch of different looks this week. But yeah, so the 11th is going to be the arrival time for most of the people attending the event.
Mhm.
But doors won't open until the 12th for everybody. We will have a private party going on for the people working the event on Friday night,
Mhm.
which we're all very excited about. Especially gives us a time to just hang out with each other, get ready for the weekend, and catch up with the talented Miss Simone. And we are, excited to see her again.
Mhm.
She is heavily promoting it, and I posted a photo of the team photo that we took with her last year
Mhm.
because we were able to get all of the cosplayers who were at the event who are appearing in her current Uncanny X-Men book.
Nice.
And she called us her greatest team, and so little badge of honor there. So we are excited.
Amazing. I love
And
this.
also, just a reminder for anybody who is attending the Uncanny Experience, classes are still available. Some are going to just be walk-in, but certain classes like the drama class that I am teaching, the mutant monologues will be we still have spots available. So if you guys are interested, please sign up as soon as possible so you can submit your monologue. And we might have some other options for people who either join at the last minute or just don't feel comfortable writing their own monologues. So sign up soon. Details are on the Uncanny Experience website.
All right, that is very cool.
Nerd cred takes time to build. Okay, because it's like, yeah. Nerd cred takes time to build.
Yeah, but it is incredibly satisfying to pop off some esoteric knowledge when somebody's questioning your nerdiness. I personally have had a lot of fun snarking back at folks who thought that I didn't know anything about anything. Wait, have dudes done that to you at parties, or am I just special?
Gatekeeping is a thing in the nerd community. And yeah, parties can get kind of crazy.
Yeah, but I mean, like, let's be honest, bro. How many Hellfire Gala looks do you have? I mean, like, I know y'all are gonna be partying at the X Mansion next week, and I'm sure that some people will be getting into some shenanigans.
Do you mean that twink who's made out with me twice while dressed as a Nightcrawler?
Alan Cumming is a bisexual icon, and making out with sexy twinks means you're paying the highest respect to his work.
I'll take that. And now it's time to mention that we have an Instagram, Up Your Nerd Cred. We're on Apple, Spotify, and YouTube, and working on expanding our reach. If you have a burning question that you want us to discuss so you can up your nerd cred, make sure you like and subscribe, leave a comment, and if we pick your question, we'll shout you out in the discussion segment.
Also, please make sure that you get your friends to also like and subscribe to the pod and like your whole family. And I'm pretty sure that you probably have like a couple of coworkers that you trust not to be weird about listening to the same podcast as you. And,
And good night, everybody.